Hollywood often promises action, adrenaline, and the illusion of danger, but sometimes that danger becomes horrifyingly real. Behind the scenes, stunt performers risk their lives to bring blockbusters to life. Yet, not all of them survive. In these 15 tragic cases, cameras kept rolling as death struck in real time. This is the dark truth behind movie magic: when the stunt goes wrong, and someone pays the ultimate price. 1. The Twilight Zone. The movie, 1983. It was meant to be a thrilling war scene. Vietnam-era chaos, fireballs lighting up the night, helicopters hovering over frightened villagers. But what happened on the set of The Twilight Zone? The movie turned into one of the most infamous tragedies in Hollywood history. Actor Vic Morrow, a veteran of both screen and stage, was filming a rescue scene alongside two child actors, Micah Dinley-Seven and Renee Shin-Yi-Chen-6. The director, John Landis, had pushed for more dramatic explosions, insisting on real pyrotechnics and low-flying helicopters. During the take, the chopper, just 25 feet above the ground, was hit by debris from the explosions. It spiraled out of control, crashing directly on top of Morrow and the children. Morrow was decapitated. The children were crushed. All three died instantly. And yes, the cameras kept rolling. The footage was later used as evidence in court, as Landis and several others were charged with manslaughter. The crew had broken labor laws by hiring children illegally and filming with explosives past midnight. The case shocked the nation, and while no one was convicted, the moral fallout was immense. Hollywood safety standards were forever changed, but at the cost of 3 lives frozen forever on film. 2. The Crow, 1994. Brandon Lee was on the verge of stardom, carrying the weight of his father Bruce Lee's legacy. The Crow, a gothic revenge thriller, was supposed to be his breakout role. He had charisma, martial arts skill, and a quiet vulnerability that made him perfect for the role of Eric Draven, a rock musician brought back from the dead to avenge his murdered lover. But Brandon would never see the finished film. On March 31, 1993, tragedy struck. During a scene where his character is shot by thugs, a prop gun was used, one that had previously held real bullets. Unbeknownst to the crew, a bullet fragment was still lodged in the barrel. When actor Michael Massey fired the blank round, the pressure from the explosion launched the fragment like a real bullet, piercing Brandon's abdomen. He collapsed on set, bleeding out in real time. Many thought he was acting. He wasn't. Rushed to the hospital, he died after 6 hours of surgery. He was 28 years old. The scene was caught on camera. Authorities ruled it an accident, but the incident remains one of the most disturbing Hollywood tragedies. The film was completed using body doubles and CGI. When it premiered, The Crow was a box office hit, forever haunted by the death captured in its frames. 3. Deadpool 2, 2018. Joy Harris was making history. A professional motorcycle racer and the first African-American woman licensed to compete in American road racing, she was hired to perform stunts for actress Zazie Beetz in Deadpool 2. It was her first job on a movie set, but tragically, it would be her last. On August 14, 2017, while filming a scene in downtown Vancouver, Harris was supposed to drive a motorcycle through a glass window and stop safely after a short burst of speed. But during the take, she lost control of the bike, struck a curb, and was violently thrown into a building. She wasn't wearing a helmet because her character wasn't. She was killed instantly. The stunt had reportedly been rehearsed multiple times, but Harris had not been given time to fully prepare. Crew members later said she didn't feel ready, but was pressured to continue. Despite immediate investigation, no charges were filed, but the tragedy sparked outrage about inexperienced stunt hires and safety protocols being ignored under production deadlines. Director David Leitch, himself a former stuntman, dedicated the film to her. But the loss was irreversible. Joy Harris died doing something she loved, yet under conditions that weren't safe enough to protect her. 4. The Expendables 2, 2012. Explosions, gunfire, high-speed boats. The Expendables 2 promised bigger and louder action than its predecessor, and it delivered. But behind the scenes, one stunt turned deadly for Chinese stuntman Kun Liu. During a complex action sequence on a lake in Bulgaria, Lou and another stuntman were inside a rubber boat that was rigged to explode as part of a dramatic battle scene. The explosion went off, too soon and too violently. Kun Liu was critically injured and later died in the hospital. His partner was severely wounded but survived. Eyewitnesses said the explosion wasn't synchronized properly with the stunt choreography, causing shrapnel and force to hit the actors directly. The worst part? The cameras were rolling. They captured the explosion, the very blast that cost Liu his life. Liu's family later filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the production, claiming negligence and unsafe conditions. Stallone and the producers expressed public condolences, but the film moved forward with release. It was meant to be adrenaline-pumping entertainment, but the cost of that thrill was paid with a young stuntman's life, cut short in service of a split-second shot. 5. The Dark Knight, 2008. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight was not only a cinematic triumph, it was a logistical marvel. From the Batpod chases to practical effects on massive sets, the production pushed boundaries. But behind that perfection was tragedy. Conway Wycliffe, a seasoned special effects technician, was preparing a test run for one of the film's most ambitious scenes, a car chase featuring the Batmobile in high-speed action. During a test run outside London, Wycliffe was leaning out of a camera car trying to capture a perfect angle. The vehicle took a sharp turn. Conway struck a tree and died instantly. He wasn't a performer. He wasn't in costume. He was a technician, one of the many unsung heroes of cinema, who gave everything for a film he wouldn't live to see completed. Wycliffe was just 41. He had worked on Batman Begins, Casino Royale, and many more. Nolan dedicated the film to him in the credits. The movie grossed over $1 billion. Audiences worldwide watched in awe. But one man behind the lens paid with his life to make Gotham look real. 6. Resident Evil. The Final Chapter, 2016. The Resident Evil series is known for its non-stop action and brutal stunts, but the final chapter became notorious for two horrifying tragedies. The first was stuntwoman Olivia Jackson, who survived a near-fatal motorcycle crash that left her in a coma and ultimately cost her an arm. But it was crew member Ricardo Cornelius who paid the ultimate price. Cornelius, a 34-year-old South African crewman, was responsible for handling one of the film's signature vehicles, a military-grade Hummer mounted on a rotating platform. On December 3, 2015, the vehicle slid off the platform unexpectedly, crushing Cornelius against a wall. He died shortly after in the hospital. The production was already under scrutiny after Jackson's catastrophic accident just weeks earlier. But Cornelius's death didn't stop filming. Production resumed within days, despite the lingering grief of the crew. Many questioned why safety measures hadn't been overhauled after the first accident. The answer? The schedule was too tight, and the film had to stay on budget. Ricardo wasn't a stuntman. He wasn't even in the scene. He was just doing his job, making the action look real, and Hollywood's silence on his death was louder than any explosion the movie produced. 7. Catch-22, 1970. War films often rely on aerial spectacle, and Catch-22, based on Joseph Heller's famous novel, spared no expense. Real vintage World War II planes were used in high-flying scenes over the Arizona desert. But what was meant to bring realism to the screen resulted in tragedy behind the scenes. During one complex sequence, two stunt pilots were performing a mock dogfight for the cameras. As they banked their aircraft in tight formation, a tragic miscalculation occurred. The two planes collided mid-air. One aircraft burst into flames. Both pilots were killed instantly. The flaming wreckage crashed just out of frame. The scene wasn't even used in the final cut. It was a devastating loss. The pilots were veterans of stunt aviation, men who had spent their careers cheating death. But even experts can't predict every variable. And on that day, Hollywood's thirst for authenticity took two lives, all in the pursuit of a war story's visual drama. There were no criminal charges, just grief, and the haunting knowledge that war, real or staged, always comes with a cost. 8. The Right Stuff, 1983. The Right Stuff aimed to honor American test pilots and astronauts who pushed the boundaries of speed and altitude. Tragically, one of the stuntmen helping to tell their story would lose his life in a sequence designed to replicate spaceflight. Joseph Leonard Svec was portraying Chuck Yeager's legendary X-1 flight. His stunt involved parachuting from a high-altitude plane while engulfed in simulated flames, a high-risk scenario that required total control. But something went horribly wrong. Mid-fall, Svec lost consciousness due to smoke inhalation from the pyrotechnic setup attached to his body. He was unable to deploy his parachute and plummeted to his death. What makes this tragedy particularly bitter is the cruel irony. The film was a tribute to real-life bravery, yet its own recreation became a death sentence for a man playing a hero. The cameras caught the fall, but his footage, like his name, was largely left out of the spotlight. The scene was reshot, the film was released, and Joseph Leonard Svec became a forgotten casualty of a film about human courage. 9. Gone in 60 Seconds 2. Unreleased, H.B. Halicki wasn't just a director. He was a legend in the stunt world. Known for Gone in 60 Seconds, he wrote, directed, and performed nearly all the film's stunts himself, including wild car chases that thrilled audiences. Years later, he began work on Gone in 60 Seconds 2, aiming to outdo his original with even more daring sequences. But on August 20, 1989, during a scene involving the demolition of a 160-foot water tower in New York, tragedy struck. As the structure collapsed, a cable snapped and struck Halicki, crushing his skull and killing him instantly. He died in front of the entire crew, including his wife. The cameras had been rolling. The footage of his death was never released, production shut down, and the film was never completed. Years later, a remake starring Nicolas Cage would become a box office hit. But H.B. Halicki, the man who lived and died for his stunts, remains a ghost behind the legend. 10th XXX, 2002. In Vin Diesel's adrenaline-fueled spy film, XXX, the stunts were designed to be jaw-dropping, especially during the climactic parasailing scenes. But behind that thrill was a quiet tragedy that most fans never knew about. Harry O'Connor, a decorated Navy SEAL-turned-stuntman, was performing a daring parasailing sequence where his character, Diesel's stunt double, glides across water and under bridges at high speed. O'Connor completed one perfect take, but during a second run, the timing was off. He was traveling over 40 miles per hour when he slammed into a bridge pillar. The impact killed him instantly. Horrifyingly, the first take, the one where he pulled it off flawlessly, was used in the final cut of the film. Audiences cheered, unaware that they were watching the successful version of a stunt that had ended a man's life minutes later. Vin Diesel dedicated the movie to O'Connor, praising his courage, but the scene remains a haunting reminder. In stunt work, there's no margin for error. One misstep is all it takes. 11. The Flight of the Phoenix, 1965. In The Flight of the Phoenix, a team of plane crash survivors rebuilds their aircraft in the desert to escape certain death. The film's tension comes from its realism, and that realism turned fatal for Paul Mantz, the legendary stunt pilot tasked with bringing it to life. Mantz had over 25 years of experience in Hollywood and was revered in aviation circles. For the film, he flew a specially designed aircraft that was deliberately unstable, built to mimic a crash-reconstructed plane. On July 8, 1965, Mantz piloted the craft during a complex touch-and-go landing on a desert set. What the cameras recorded was not a stunt. It was a death. The plane came in too fast, its fragile body fractured mid-landing, and the aircraft broke apart violently. The nose slammed into the ground, flipping the plane and instantly killing Mantz. His co-pilot miraculously survived. Mantz's final moments were captured on film. Shocked producers scrapped the footage, and the incident sparked industry-wide debate over risk in aerial stunt coordination. A safety legend had died doing what he loved, but in a plane designed to look broken, reality proved just as dangerous as fiction. 12. For Your Eyes Only, 1981. James Bond films are known for breathtaking stunts, but for your eyes only turned deadly during one of its underwater sequences. Italian stuntman Paolo Rigon was filming an intense deep-sea scene set inside a sunken ship where Bond is trapped and surrounded by enemies. The scene required stunt divers to work inside submerged sets for extended periods, coordinating precise moves while surrounded by props, costumes, and limited visibility. Rigon entered the shipwreck set, but something went wrong. He failed to resurface. Crew members later discovered he had become trapped inside the artificial structure and drowned before help could reach him. Despite this, the production continued, and the scene was reshot with another performer. Rigon's name was quietly omitted from most credits, his story buried in the franchise's otherwise glamorous history. Behind Bond's charm and spectacle lies a truth that isn't shaken or stirred. Even in fiction's most polished universe, real danger lurks beneath the surface. 13th Vampire in Brooklyn, 1995. It was supposed to be a campy horror comedy starring Eddie Murphy, but Vampire in Brooklyn became the scene of a tragedy for stuntwoman Sonia Davis. Known for her bold high falls, Davis was hired to perform a dramatic plunge from a rooftop over 40 feet onto an airbag. On the day of the shoot, something went terribly wrong. The rigging wasn't properly secured, the wind conditions were unfavorable, and when Davis jumped, she missed the airbag completely. She landed head first on concrete. Witnesses described a sickening silence on set. Davis was rushed to the hospital, but her injuries were catastrophic. She died 13 days later, after remaining in a coma. She was only 33 years old. The stunt had been rehearsed. It had been calculated. But the margin for error was razor thin. Her family later sued Paramount Pictures, claiming safety standards were ignored. The case was settled out of court. The cameras had captured her final fall, meant for entertainment, but destined to be remembered as a death sentence wrapped in fiction. 14 Troy, 2004. With a cast led by Brad Pitt and a massive budget, Troy was a sprawling epic of myth, war, and ancient heroism. But behind the glint of bronze armor and sword fights was a tragedy involving Maltese bodybuilder and stuntman George Camilleri. During filming at Fort Ricasoli in Malta, Camilleri broke his leg while performing a relatively minor stunt, one that was supposed to be safe. He underwent surgery to correct the fracture, but something went wrong during recovery. Days later, he collapsed and died suddenly from complications related to a blood clot. While his death wasn't caught directly on camera, it stemmed from a stunt-related injury sustained on set. The production pressed on, and Camilleri's name was barely mentioned in the press tour. No tribute, no dedication, just silence. But for those who knew him, his death cast a shadow over a film that glorified war and valor. Camilleri wasn't fighting a Trojan army. He was fighting for his career, for his shot in Hollywood, and in that pursuit, he lost everything. 15th, Top Gun, 1986. Top Gun wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural milestone. With roaring jets and Tom Cruise in the cockpit, it glamorized aerial combat like never before. But the man responsible for filming many of those dazzling flight scenes, Art Scholl, didn't live to see its success. Scholl was a veteran stunt pilot and aerial cinematographer, brought in to capture realistic in-flight footage using a customized Pitts S2 camera plane. On September 16, 1985, while performing an inverted spin maneuver off the coast of California, Scholl radioed in with his final words, "I've got a problem. I've got a real problem." Then, silence. His plane spiraled into the Pacific Ocean and was never recovered. Neither was his body. No one knows what malfunctioned. The footage he was trying to capture was never found. The movie was dedicated to him. But for aviation and film communities alike, the loss of Art Scholl was profound. He died in pursuit of the perfect shot, lost to the sky and sea, his last frame never seen. Fiction may thrill us, but behind the lens are real people, brave, brilliant, and all too mortal. These 15 stunt deaths remind us that the price of movie magic can be heartbreakingly steep. If this story moved you, like and subscribe for more real tales behind the silver screen. Stay safe. Stay human.